Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Anthropology 310, Origins of Human Diversity. It is August 23rd. It is Friday of week one. Welcome. I'm recording this video. I'm trying to figure out the picture-in-picture, but I'll definitely have it figured out next week. I'm just recording it my face right now. So if you are not here at any time in the semester, you can always take a look and see what we did. But I encourage you to be here because starting next week, once add drop is over, we'll be doing extra credit for attendance. So please show up and get that extra credit. Today, if you were in the earlier class, you probably know what I'm going to talk about. We're going to give a general outline of what is anthropology, what are the four subfields, what we're going to be doing in here, and how we know what we know, as well as some of those bigger questions about anthropology. We might end a little bit early too, because it's Friday, and I know y'all are ready for the weekend. It's been a tough week one, right? We're almost there. Okay, we'll ramp it up for you. All right. Yeah. It's super hard to do anything before next Tuesday, really, because add drop is then, and then people join us and they leave us. So, like was alluded by your classmate, we have, well, that's not the right syllabus. It's a pretty light week. Let's take a look at the syllabus. Only two things due this week. It's Friday, which means that things are due. One of the things that I disliked as a student when I was your age was professors who would have things due on different days. Oh, your discussion boards are due on Tuesday at 7, and your homeworks are due at Friday at 5, and your quizzes are due Saturday at midnight. That's confusing. My brain power is elsewhere. So everything in this class is always due Friday at midnight, and it is Friday, so let's take a look at what you got to do. Discussion board number 1 and participation agreement. It's the easiest week of the semester. I'd like to lure you in with some easier assignments before we get into something. I don't think there's anything too tricky later, but something more substantial. So let's take a look. Participation agreement, super easy. You just click on this link right here. You acknowledge that you have read the syllabus, which we went over before. You also acknowledge that you decide to participate in this class and agree to the terms that I have set out. It's a contract. It's a contract in like the contract sense, not in the legally binding sense, but you know, it's a contract between me and you. It's a social contract. We're anthropologists here. The other thing is discussion board number 1. Again, this is the kind of thing that you all should get an A on because it's about you. You know you better than anybody else. So what you're going to do is you're going to post a headshot. You're going to post some information about yourself, like your name, your year, your class, your hometown, your major, any previous experience in anthropology, if any. And then 2 questions about who you are and why you are here, right? Who you are. This could be something pretty basic. It could be like, I'm a football player, I'm a rodeo star, I am an esports gamer. Or it could be something more like existential, like I'm a dreamer, I'm a, you know, I have a poetic soul or something like that, right? I don't know. You do you. And then why are you here? And again, this could be totally super straightforward and basic. I'm here because I need a global diversity 300 level credit. Don't be ashamed if that's why you're here. But it could also be something more profound. I've always wanted to know about the origins of human diversity, or like I'm super interested in where we came from and where we're going, or I love to hear about pyramids and I wanted to learn how to make arrowheads. And I heard this was the class for that. So any of those are proper responses. You can see some of your classmates have already started doing it, posting pictures and writing a little about yourself. Oh, tiny tigers in this class. That's cool. If you post all the information, including a picture, you can get 8 points. And you might say, but doesn't it say 10 points possible? It does. How do you get those last 2 points? Respond to someone else. Thank you, my ringer from the earlier class. Yeah, respond to somebody else, right? And Jose is like super on top of things. So if you post your post and then like midnight and Jose at 12:05 gives you an 8 because you didn't respond to somebody else, don't worry, you can still respond to somebody else and we'll change your grade. It's super easy in Canvas to change your grade. We like to just grade it as soon as it comes in. That way you remember to do it. The only thing is if you're the very first person of the week to post, don't be like, I only got an 8. There's nobody else posting. I'm an A student because I'm the kind of person who posts early. I'm so broken up over this. Don't worry. Just wait till somebody else posts and then respond to them and we'll give you your full 10. It's no big deal. Okay, any questions about that? Your assignments you're doing today? Yeah. Just the one. You can do more, but it's up to you. The idea, especially with this one, but also in general, is to create a sense of community, both in real life, as well as online. And sometimes it's easier to do it online because you're digital natives, as they say. You are young, you are on your phones every minute of every day. So make some friends in here and engage with each other. It also helps us with things like accreditation for HLC. So they can see that our Canvas shells are not just, here's a bunch of PowerPoints, which you can access. That it's actually like interactive and you're discussing with each other and you're engaging with each other. You're like, oh, you're from Florida too. We're really out of place here. Or, oh, you love horses. Me too. Or, oh, you went to Madagascar. That was super cool. I bet. Tell me a little bit about it, right? Doesn't have to be anything super profound and you don't have to be besties with the person, but just, interact and use the board and get your 10 points. Again, super easy. Everybody should do it and everybody should start off the semester with an A. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about from the syllabus are office hours. I've updated the syllabus to be reflective of the office hours of Jose and I this semester. And we've done, I think, a pretty good job of spreading out our office hours over the course of the week, as well as over different times. So if you'll notice, we have, there's some will be available to you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, not Saturday and Sunday, because we don't work. We do work, just not here. As well as at different times of the day. We got morning, we got midday, and we got evening. So if you want to find someone to talk to in person, Mondays I'll be here 9 to 10, 12 to 1, and 2 to 2:30. Tuesdays, Jose will be in his office, which is down the hall to the right. It's in the grad lounge down there from 8 to 11 a.m. Don't be confused and think it's night. The doors will be locked then. Wednesday, 9 to 10 and 2 to 2:30 will be my office hours in my office, and 135 down the hall over there. Thursday, I have a 4 to 5 session. So those of you who might have things during the day, want an afternoon session, you can come by. And then Friday, 12 to 1 right before this class. So please feel free to stop by if you have any questions. Don't wait till midterms and finals and just be like, oh, I'm so freaked out. I need to graduate and my mom will hate me if I fail this class. Shouldn't be failing this class in the first place. But you can come to me early and we'll work through it and get you some points and stuff like that. And then it won't be a rush at the end. Also, you just come by if you want to, if your advisor is a little mid and hasn't really helped you figure out your degree plan, even if you're not an anthropologist, I can help you look at some classes. Or if you want to talk about some of the big ideas, you're like, oh man, hieroglyphics, I want to really learn about this. I can give you a book about it or something like that, right? Or you want to learn about grad school or anything like that. So please feel free to stop by. If you can't make one of those times, or you're just, like I said, one of those digital natives who cringe at face-to-face interactions, we can do Zoom, we can do email, phone calls if you're elderly like me, and we can chat. Okay, any questions? Cool. Let's rock. Okay, so like I said last time, the Canvas modules are really straightforward. We're in week 1. Start with reading Muckle chapter 1. We're going to go through the PowerPoint today, and we'll take a look at one of these videos as well. Here's your assignments for this week. Also down here, I've been recording these lectures, and at the end of the day, I'll be posting the lecture to Canvas, so you can always catch up, or you can review, or if you're out of town for, a band conference or a rodeo event, you can always just watch and see what we did that day. Okay. So last time I gave a brief introduction to this class, 5 million years of human history, all the cool stuff that humans have ever made, done, said, thought, or believed over the course of time, as well as our ancestors. So a lot to cover. And we're going to be using the discipline of anthropology to study that. Because this is an anthropology class, right? Anth 310. Anth 310. So what is anthropology? I think we talked about it last time, hopefully. Hopefully you're in the right place. Yeah. Yeah, past, present, and future. Which is kind of fun. A little about science fiction anthropology. But yeah. And that seems cool. But it also seems a little intimidating, right? How do you study all people, all places and times from basically the beginning to now and maybe in the future? How might we study? We'll say 5 million years ago to today. All people, all around the world, all places and times, everything they've ever made, done, said, or thought. How could we study that? Beyond just like using anthropology. What are we actually going to do? Yeah, we're going to talk about methods next week. That's pretty cool. What else? What kind of methods? Yeah. Yeah, keep going. You got it. Yeah. 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 Right. And so we'll be doing this kind of multi-methodological or multi-paradigm analysis, right? What do you think you could gain over a very narrow way of thinking about human culture? Why are we so eclectic? Why use so many different ways? Yeah, we're humans. We do lots of different things, and it's hard to like capture everything we do, right? If we were studying black holes and astronomy or stars or something, we might have just a few methods, right? Because they're defined objects and you could use, you could improve. We're using a telescope, we're using a radio telescope now, or we're using something else, but very similar kind of methodologies which you'd use. But humans are complex and messy creatures. And so we're going to be using a lot of different ways to fill in the picture, right? There's like a parable, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it, right? This story about if you had like five blind men trying to describe an elephant, right? And one touches the trunk, and one touches the leg, and one touches the tail, and one touches the tusk, right? And they all have a different perspective on what that elephant is, but nobody really has the whole picture, right? But when you combine them all together, maybe you get kind of a better overall understanding. And that's what we're going to try to do. Pardon the elephant metaphor. Okay, who are anthropologists? This is one of my conferences and one of my research area is anthropology and pop culture, which I think is super cool. I like to apply anthropology to pop culture or even look at anthropologists in popular culture. And if we're talking about anthropology and pop culture, probably at the top of the pantheon is this shirtless or partially unbuttoned shirt dude with the hat on. Who is he? Indiana Jones. What's he do? Yeah, more or less, right? Not a ton of like methodological scientific archaeology going, more treasure hunting, more Nazi punching, right? But when you tell your mom that you're taking an archaeology class, that's probably who she's thinking of, or your roommate or whoever, right? But again, maybe not the most accurate depiction, but it's a starting place, right? We all know Indiana Jones. That's good. We have something in common. Now we can like move on from there. We'll talk about what's really going on. I'm a cultural anthropologist. So this one kind of illustrates us, right? You got this canoe coming down the river, grass huts. You got some pasty white guys wearing all khaki, pith helmets, Coke bottle glasses, notebook and camera, coming to study these natives who are hiding their modern technology, right, to appear more traditional. And this is often what people think of when they think of cultural anthropology, right? Oh, you like live in a village in a grass hut. Oh, you slept in a hammock. Wow, how quaint, how interesting with the native people, right? And again, this is probably as close to reality as this is. There's some truth there, but also we'll get into what real cultural anthropology is all about. Okay, so anthropology. What is it? Anthropos logos. What does ology mean? The study of. That's good. Latin. Anthros. Study of humans. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Studying humans. And more so, I think, than any other class that you'll take here. This class specifically is the study of humans in all of their shapes and forms from the very beginning to today. And especially in the last couple of years, I've revamped the end of the class. We're going to take a grand tour of the world. I'd love to put you all on. There's the a year abroad that like one of my friends in school that you go on a cruise boat all around the world for a whole year and you go to different cultures and you learn about them. That would be super cool. And I'd love to take you there, but I don't have a cruise boat or the money, and probably you don't either. So we're going to do virtual tour, right? We're going to travel to Egypt. We're going to go to Mesopotamia, ancient China, India, the Pacific Islands, New Zealand, and Hawaii. We're going to go to sub-Saharan Africa, the Great Zimbabwe. We're going to go to North America and see Cahokia and Chaco Canyon. We're going to do Central America, the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca, and South America, the Incas, and other groups there, right? So we're going to kind of see the whole world, even though we can't like go, but hopefully you'll have a good idea, right? But we're going to study humans in all their amazing variety, which I think is pretty cool. Anthropology itself, right? Even though this term is very old, we are the first of the ologies, which I think is a great Jeopardy kind of question, if you're ever on Jeopardy. But the term doesn't really come into its own until a little bit later. But you can kind of think about what's going on at the time. 1593, wait, this is about right at kind of the start, more or less, right when colonialism and the age of exploration get going. In 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue. And it turns out he didn't go to China. He went to the New World and discovered lots of different kinds of people there. And from the very beginning, different kinds of people were perplexing to the Europeans who traveled there. Who are these people? Are they people? Are they not people? Are they related to us? Are they some earlier form of creature? Are they just like us? And what does that mean for our place in the world? Many of these early anthropologists, kind of early days, early colonial days, were not, well, there wasn't really a department of anthropology. You couldn't just go to Eastern New Mexico University and get a degree in anthropology. Many of the people who we consider as some of the earliest anthropologists did other things because anthropology wasn't a job. You did jobs that took you to interesting and strange places and let you interact with people from different parts of the world. And you probably wrote about it in your diary because you were having such a weird, cool / horrible time that you wanted to write about it for later. So many of these early accounts of other people in other places come from doctors, soldiers, missionaries, explorers, right? The people out there on the frontier, however you would define that, interacting with other groups of people and writing about it today. This has both good and bad, right? So what do you think might be some of the benefits of some of these early accounts that we have from the 1800s, 1900s? This is like a call and response kind of class. Just yell out to me. Yeah, right. They got biases, right? Well, they did have a lot of benefits because they were some of the first people to write about these other groups. And some of these groups do not exist today because of warfare, because of disease or colonialization or colonization has kind of disrupted these social patterns. And they wrote about some of these things. These people had biases, right? If you're a soldier sent to pacify those hostile natives over there on the frontier, while you might be interested, you might be the Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner, like, oh, I'm really interested in these people, but you're still a soldier, right? You're still a missionary, you're still a trader, you're still an explorer. You have these other biases, right? You have your other mission. You grew up in a certain kind of culture that maybe, especially during that time, kind of put themselves at the top of not only the cultural, but the supposed evolutionary hierarchy of races and cultures as well. So while a lot of these early people were, interested in kind of ideas that maybe seem weird to us today or seem racist or seem just kind of suspect, like, are all those people really human? I wonder. Do different size heads correspond to intelligence? Do different colors of skin correspond to different levels of civilization? Can we all be humans, or are some people sub races or something like that? While those questions are kind of cringe to us today, they do form the basis of some of these big inquiries into like what makes us human, right? So we can't, I mean, it's easy for us in the 21st century to criticize these as like hopelessly outdated and just kind of naive ideas, but this is where people start, right? And it's good to like see where we come from and then to overcome it, right? It's like if you have learning of, talking to your grandparents or your great grandparents, and like some of the ideas might be a little outdated, but you can still, respect how you got to where you are today because of those people who came before you. But by the late 1800s, 1885, 1890, 1900, there became this idea in both the United States as well as in Great Britain and France and Germany, other countries, that while these early accounts added something, that probably it's time to invent the discipline of anthropology as a scientific discipline in which you could like get a degree and actually like focus on that instead of just being like a doctor and I'm a doctor who works in a fort in the middle of Zaire and I write about what I see there, right? Sending actual people who are trained in anthropology to start doing this work. And this is both encompasses, we'll talk about different subfields like cultural anthropology, but also archaeology, linguistic anthropology, and physical anthropology. So by beginning of the 20th century, Franz Boas in America, Pitt Rivers and W.H.R. Rivers and other people like that in England start to set up actual departments of anthropology like you're in right now, taking anthropology classes. In Europe, it's a little bit different. Different countries group the subfields of anthropology together. We in the United States do it this way: cultural anthropology, archaeology, linguistic anthropology, and physical anthropology all fall within the umbrella. In Great Britain, it's a little bit different. Cultural anthropology is often grouped with like sociology and ethnology or ethnography. Archaeology gets put with the classics, and linguistics ends up over in language and literature. But this is what we would call the American paradigm of anthropology. So I'm going to show you a video next about some of the subfields in anthropology, not so much describing what they are, but this is from a department of anthropology in which they made a video trying to like showcase the breadth of things that people in that department do. That's one of the things I really like about being an anthropologist, is that we get to learn about lots of different things. My area of research is pretty specific. And I work in a Maya community in Belize with chocolate farmers looking at religious and economic change. Super specific, right? But even within our department here at Eastern, we have 4 people, right? We have a whole lot of variety of what we study. Right? We have people who study some of the first people in the Americas 12,000 years ago at Blackwater Draw. We have other people who work in the Bahamas looking at sociohydrology. We have other people doing forensic anthropology, solving cases and looking at patterns of abuse in different kind of circumstances, right? And we're all grouped together as anthropology, which I think is super interesting, right? If you're in other departments, it might not be quite as diverse. I don't want to like talk about badly about other departments, but if you're an English major and you're an English professor, you might be focused on British literature, and someone else American literature. Well, you're still kind of doing literature. I think anthropology, we tend to be broader in both the types of questions that we ask and the types of methods that we use to solve those questions. We'll look at methods next week. So I'm going to show you a video quick, just to kind of show you within one department some of the broad things that anthropologists can do. So maybe you can get some ideas of what you want to do when you grow up. So take a look at this, and especially within the 4 fields, which we're going to talk about when we rejoin after the video. Think about kind of what anthropology, what the breadth of anthropology is, right? What kind of stuff could we study? And maybe hypothetically, if you grow up to be an anthropologist, what kind of thing maybe would you like to study? So let's take a look.
If you notice changes in your child's behavior, is their idea of a good time digging in the mud for hours? If given the choice, would they rather spend time harvesting rice with Thai villagers than going to a 5-star resort? You keep hearing them saying crazy things like,
Period in Egypt.
Paleo-environmental reconstruction. Stabilize-isotope analysis. Whale bone.
Little flint chips.
Sclerochronology.
Paleopathological context.
So your kid wants to be an anthropologist.
Mother didn't have much of a reaction. My parents were just happy that I went to university. My father didn't know what anthropology was.
When I told my parents I was going to be an anthropologist, they thought I meant an architect.
Oh, are you going to design your own house one day?
I'm pretty sure somebody's already named all the different spiders now. My parents had no idea what anthropology was.
First off, don't panic. It's gonna be okay. I promise. Check it out.
So, what is anthropology? Seriously, does anyone know?
Oh, I know, John Oliver. Anthropology is the study of human beings, past and present. We study cultures, bones, old tools buried in the ground, monkeys, people all around the world, and the zillions of ways they interact.
We're changing to age for a sharper issues from networking.
We've got our fingers in lots of pots. We like to call it full limb.
Wow, I thought psychology was a racket.
So there are lots of different kinds of anthropologists. Shall we meet some of them?
I'm a primatologist. I'm studying long-tailed cats.
Anthropologists study all primates, not just humans, including the interactions between different kinds of primates.
I was interested in primatology because it allowed me to travel all over the world.
I'm a sociocultural anthropologist and working in the Western Pacific. Mainly my work has been on mining local people and rescue people.
I do sociocultural anthropology, and I do research in Madagascar, specific sapphire mining and ecotourism that I described.
One of the great things about anthropology and the study of human beings is the study of human beings everywhere, meaning you can research in anthropology, apply insights away, but also at home.
Boy, I'm gonna forget it. On 30 complex society.
I'm a new archaeologist, which means I study animal bones from archaeological sites in order to learn about people in the past. The thing I love most about archaeology is the sense of immediate connection you get through staying with people in the past. When you expose something that's been buried in the ground for hundreds or even thousands of years, you have this moment where you feel like you're the first person to touch this thing in a really long time.
I do linguistic anthropology, and I'm studying Asian ancient studies. Students in anthropology pick up a lot of skills that students in other majors will never pick up, like cross-cultural communication. Anthropologists pick that up. They're very quick to recognize cultural differences and try to figure out what they are and deal with them.
Seabirds, being an anthropologist is a pretty cool job.
My parents actually really proud of me, especially my mom. She was really encouraging to have grown on them. They realized that their contemporary applications to my degree.
When I was an archaeologist, it was kind of exciting. The French said something about story.
I was planning to become an instrument maker, so when she heard that I was going into anthropology, she was actually really
My parents were actually pretty excited for me now, and I told them that anthropology and research can actually take me all over the world.
She was very proud of me, and that's when I actually got a job in area.
We definitely, it's great to have the fact that I work with bones and teeth and human remains, but at the same time that both my parents are very supportive and they really excited about what I'm doing.
It's going to thrive.
All right. So what kind of things did you see in the video? What were anthropologists doing? What were they studying? Yeah, primates. And we're going to actually do 2 weeks on that. A lot of people like that. We can go do a little bit of extra credit and look at the primates at the Clovis Zoo if you're interested. I think it's super cool. Also bring in some skulls. We have a nice collection of primate skulls. Everything from like lemur teeth that are really little to gorilla skulls like this. So I'll bring those in and you'll get to play with those. You get to be a primatologist for 2 weeks. That's fun. What else did you see in the video? Yeah, different cultures around the world. Cultural anthropology. You saw people living in Madagascar and Papua New Guinea, and we're going to use some of that in this class as well. I'll talk about how people live today and how they might have lived in the past using what we call ethnographic analogy. What else did you see? Yeah, linguistics, talking about language. And we'll talk both about spoken language, but especially in the context of the past, we'll talk about like the invention of writing and things like that. So how did language as a whole emerge? Do other primates have language? Do other animals have language? Is it the same as ours? Is it different than us? And then how, if we're speaking languages for a very long time, hundreds of thousands of years, if not more, how does written language come about? And how does it seem to come about independently in multiple parts of the world that don't have connections to each other all right around the same time? It's a really interesting question. We'll be talking about that. And finally, the last one, what did you see? Yeah, both archaeology as well as like zooarchaeology. So archaeology being the study of material remains of the past, artifacts like arrowheads and pots and things. You can also study bones that are in the past, or you find oftentimes in association with stuff. When I was doing archaeology in Belize, we'd often find tombs, right? So you dig up, oh, there's a tomb, there's a body here, there's bones. We can learn a lot about the person from the bones. Are they male? Are they female? Are they a child? Are they elderly? Do they have good health or do they have bad health? Were they getting enough nutrition or were they not? And what does that tell us about their social place in society? But also the kind of stuff that they were buried with. Do you think people were buried with different kinds of stuff? Yeah, 100%, right? The king's going to be buried with very different kinds of stuff than a peasant or a slave. Sometimes the slaves even get buried along with the king, whether they like it or not, right? And so we can learn a lot about the past by digging it up. Again, this is part of that holistic anthropology, which we'll talk about in just a second, in which we're interested in all things that people are doing. And it's a really interesting combination. Like I said, it's not found in other anthropology disciplines in other countries. It's really a artifact, pardon the pun, of anthropologist Franz Boas, who began American anthropology. And it's really one of his genius legacies, is to combine these things that are combined like the physical sciences with the humanities and the social sciences to get this really synthetic view of humans. So let's talk about the four and how they might fit into this class. Yeah. No, but we often have to, because this class especially is the 5 million years of human history, we will be drawing on paleontology, geology, history, study of religions. Yeah, and we do have things. Yeah, and especially when we're talking about really old stuff, right? Or not even that old. So like Blackwater Draw site located 7 miles from here, between here and the south gate of Cannon Air Force Base. I believe we talked about it last time. It's a super important archaeology site. It was for about 70 years the earliest archaeological evidence of humans in North America. Our students all love to work out there because it's right here and it's famous, right? You need to know about people, you need to know about stone tools, but they also need to know about paleontology, right? Because these are ancient mammoth hunters, right? They were hunting woolly mammoths, an ancient extinct bison, and sometimes getting snacked on by saber-toothed tigers, right? So it's not enough to just be like, I'm just a people person, right? I don't want to look at those things, right? But we do incorporate that, and especially like in zooarch and things like that. Or we have a geoarchaeology class within archaeology, which we learn about. It's very geological, right? You learn about soil samples and clays versus silt levels, and you learn about Munsell charts and things like that. So we are very eclectic, and we do try to draw in the best of every other discipline, which is why you heard the guy in the video say anthropology, the one true science. Maybe that's a little overblown, but I tend to think that that's we're on the right track at least. Okay, so we're gonna do the 4 subfields. Each of these subfields has like subfields, right? So like if you're an archaeologist, you can be like, I'm a zooarchaeologist. I study animal bones that people ate in the past, or I am a geoarchaeologist. I am interested in the soil formations and sedimentation, right? This is the big stuff. And when we get you hooked in and bring you back for class number 2 or 3, then we'll get into the more specifics, right? Cultural anthropology, broadly, that's what I do. Focus on living people. Again, this might be a weird thing to think about for studying how we study 5 million years of human history. But oftentimes living people are our best guide, right? Because people are people. Things have changed quite a bit in that time, but we're still people, right? We still do these kind of things, people-y kind of things. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. But all people around the world share certain common traits, right? We all communicate with language. We all differentiate people in our society based on how old they are, whether they're men or women or third gender, fourth gender, however societies classify them. We all have different kinds of jobs. We all raise our children. We all have concepts of privacy. We make rules. We make morality and religion and spirituality. We have aesthetics and art, body ornamentation. We all make jokes. We all tell myths. We all tell stories. We all have politics and leadership, which is kind of cool, right? That we all around the world, at least since the recognizable start of human civilization, if not before, have all this stuff. But what's really interesting to us as anthropologists is that even though people are all the same, they're all very different, right? And so by studying people around the world through cultural anthropology, by living with different groups, by living with sapphire miners in Madagascar, by living with, translocal religious movements in Papua New Guinea, by living with chocolate farmers in Belize, we can start to see how, well, yes, everyone has politics, but those politics are really different, right? Everyone has kinship, but who you call mom, who you call dad, who you call brother and cousin is all going to be really different in different societies. And by seeing that breadth of cultural similarities and differences, it helps us think about the past. One of the things that always kind of frustrates me, especially when I go to these like archaeology students, when they do their thesis defenses, right? They'll often be like, well, in the past, it's pretty much like today. I assume that they live pretty much like today, right? They had markets, they had guilds and things like that. They traded things. Like, well, yeah, probably, but how is it different, right? What are the differences? And sometimes those differences make a big difference. So cultural anthropology gives us what we call often ethnographic analogy, right? It helps us think about the differences and similarities of people, and then we can extrapolate that to think about the past, right? We can study a hunting and gathering society today. There are still people out there who live mobile hunting and gathering lives, living in bands of 100 people or less, moving around, whether in South Africa or up in the high Arctic or in the outback of Australia. And then we can use that to think about how people who lived in those kind of societies in the past might have lived, right? How did ancient hunter and gatherers in New Mexico 10,000 years ago at Blackwater Draw live? Well, instead of me just imagining from my first world positionality growing up in a middle-class household how they might have lived, I can ask other hunter and gatherers. It's not going to be the same, right? Because they have different technology now. They might have a cell phone. They might be part of colonial governments. They might be colonized by other groups. But still, we can learn about like, wow, there's a famous archaeology study where Louis Benford, probably the most, I think he just died recently, but one of the most famous archaeologists of the recent decades, right? He's an archaeologist, but he did cultural anthropology as well. He was studying, I want to learn about the food processing behaviors of hunting and gathering people. Once they kill an animal, what do they do with it? And how do they eat it? And how do they dispose of it? How would you go about learning about that? Yeah, he did himself. He went to the Arctic. He lived with hunting and gathering Eskimo or Inuit people. He learned how to hunt. And beyond that, he learned how to butcher. And then he would sit around the campfire at night. He would eat the meat and would throw the bones just like everybody else. Yeah, and then he would map it. He went around with this little chart and he mapped out where all the bones that they were eating and throwing went, or where they butchered it, what parts they left there, right? I'm going to leave the hooves and the head because I don't want that, or the tails, and whatever they're going to leave. And I'm going to take back certain parts because it's more efficient. And then you can use that to talk about the past, right? He used ethnographic analogy. Cultural anthropology before the 1970s probably looked a lot like this. And this is how it looks in a lot of people's popular imagination, if it exists at all in their popular imagination. This is Margaret Mead. She is probably the most famous cultural anthropologist. Shout out to her. She was, especially in her day, like the 40s through the 70s, I think, when she died. She was on TV talk shows all the time. She was, writing newspaper columns. She was even the only anthropologist ever featured on a postage stamp. That's another good Jeopardy trivia. But this is her in Samoa doing Samoa stuff, right? She lived in a community for a long period of time. She dressed like they did. She lived like they did. Get up and go to the farm every day, or take care of the kids, or make food every day, just like the ladies are making. She spoke their language, tried to be part of the community, right? We're not going native, so to speak. We're not going to like become those people and stay there forever, but we are going to try to put ourselves in a very close proximity so we can learn about these things. This is kind of the outdated, not quite racist, but slightly problematic view of cultural anthropology, right? Because it was all about studying those people. And since the 70s, we've kind of understood in anthropology that it's not just about everybody else. We have culture too, right? And some of the most famous ethnographies of recent years have been with people in our own society, right? Whether it's a cultural study of how people use TikTok on their phones, right? One thing I think is really interesting, I want to do a study on, is how people relate to technology. When I started being an anthropologist, nobody had the internet or email in like my second year of college. And now you all have email addresses. And we're like, what do we do with them? And they're like, email each other. Okay. And then, as the years have gone on, that has become such a ubiquitous part of your college experience. The point where no one had laptops when I started university. We were all just like in the computer lab, and you can only use so much time. And then last year I had a situation where students I've never had a laptop. I only have a phone. It's like, wow, we've come full circle. The laptops have come and gone, right? When I was applying for jobs, one of the places I was applying for was like Facebook and Google and Amazon, because they're hiring anthropologists to understand how people use these technologies. What button do you click when you're in Amazon? How do we make you buy more stuff? How do we make you decide to use Safari versus Chrome or something like that, right? Anthropology, because we're studying people. And I said this in the last class. One of my favorite ethnographers recently is Karen Ho. She was a Wall Street investment banker, made it super rich, and did what all investment bankers do, is quit their job and go back to grad school for being an anthropologist, got her PhD in anthropology. And they asked her, what tribe are you going to go study? What group? And she said, investment bankers on Wall Street. And that's her famous book. It's a book called Liquidated, in which she writes about the culture and, the strange ways of investment banking from an insider perspective. It's super interesting. The other one that we're primarily going to use, especially from week 8, I think, on in this semester, is archaeology, right? We're going to study people in the past through material cultures. We're going to talk a lot about this next week, how we dig things up, what is an artifact versus a feature versus a site, but basically digging up the material remains of the past, things that people make. Again, this can be broader, or there are adjacent things like zoo archaeology, which I had a grad student, I was on their committee, studying zoo archaeology in the Southwest, and they were looking at turkey bones and deer bones in a ancient Southwest Pueblo. And they were looking at how across time people went from primarily finding deer bones in the lowest levels to turkey bones in the mid levels and deer bones in the upper levels, right? So as you move forward in time, they went from deer to turkey back to deer. And then made a case about how this was indicative of them going from a farming society, because deer are wild creatures and they were hunting them. Turkeys are domesticated creatures. They started having farming and domestication, but then the society starts to fall apart and they move back to hunting and gathering. And you can see that just by the types of animals that they're eating. When we talk about archaeology, we're really dividing it up two kind of divisions. It's not super strict. Prehistoric, the time before writing. Why might archaeology be super important to study the time before writing? How would you even know, right? Like if there's no written records, how would you know? Well, you dig up the past, right? You dig a hole in the ground, and if you find something, you're like, I wonder if this ancient civilization had pottery, right? Or if they were a basket society. Well, you can find that out by digging a hole in the ground where that city is, and you can see, do you find pottery, right? And you'll probably find at the lowest levels, far back, there was no pottery, and then suddenly there is. When did that happen, and why did it happen? Right? We don't have any written records of that, and sometimes the archaeology is the only thing we have. We can also do historic archaeology in the time of written records. And so why would we need to do that if we have written records? It's already written. This is what the historians will tell you. We have history. We don't need that archaeology. Why might it be useful to combine the two? It might not be right. People might write things with their own self-interest in mind, especially in a time and an age when not everyone is literate, right? Who is literate in these early societies? The rich people, right? Or the people who work for them, the king and his scribes. And are those scribes going to write something not flattering about the king? What happens if they do? You lose your job in one way or another. Maybe you're unemployed, maybe you're headless, who knows? But oftentimes, what's written doesn't paint the whole picture, right? The slaves aren't out there writing their own accounts a lot of times, or the peasants, or the merchant class. So like when I did archaeology in Belize, it's a historic site. There is hieroglyphic writing that tells you about the past. But what we were interested in was not the kings. We were interested in the people who lived next to the kings, all the people who made the king's house go, right? The people who made the pots, the people who made the arrowheads, the people who made served them food, who took care of their animals. What was their lives like? We're almost done. We're also going to do biological anthropology. We got a couple of weeks on this. We're going to talk about primates. We're going to talk about who are all these primates? What's the difference between a monkey and an ape? Is Curious George a monkey, or is he an ape? No tail. That's a great extra credit question right there too. We'll talk about who maybe are our closest primate relatives. We'll talk about culture. Do primates have culture? Do they make technology? Do they do tools? Do they have language? Questions, right? We'll also talk about modern people. Is there a difference between people in different countries or different parts of the world? Yeah, but maybe not in the ways that we normally think of, right? Our ideas of race and culture maybe don't map up to what we think of as human genetics. We'll also look at diet and nutrition and how things like the invention of agriculture and the domestication of plants and animals not only changed how we live in a society, but also changed our bodies. And finally, language, linguistic anthropology, how people communicate. We'll be looking at not only verbal writing. When does language come about? Do animals have language? Or is it similar to ours, or is it the same? When do we see the first definite things about language? And how can we tell that from the archaeological record? That's going to be an interesting question. And when and where does written language come about? And if it does seem to emerge independently at multiple sites in around the same time, more or less in history, what is the cause of that, right? These are some big questions. Ooh. Can we do it? We can do it, right? Come on this journey with me this semester, right? And we're going to answer all these questions over about 5 million years in 16 weeks. That's it for today. If you're still hyped, I'll see you next week, and we will jump into anthropological methods. It's easy to say that we're going to study everything in human history, but we're going to talk about next week how we actually do that. So see you then.